Yo, what's going on, everybody? This is Abdullah Konte from Win Sports, and I'm here with another episode, really just kind of talking about the most recent news from the day. Obviously, there's not a ton going on. We found out who the DC is a couple days ago, so a lot of people are doing deep dives on free agency. I mean, we're a month and a week away from free agency. So I kind of wanted to talk about an article that I saw today in CBS Sports, but also kind of wanted to talk about Dan Quinn, and, I heard a discussion about how hot is his seat overall. So I thought it was two things to talk about. Obviously the free agency thing, we're starting to, gain some steam, just because of the fact that now that we know who these, offensive and defensive coordinators are, we don't know exactly how their strategies are going to be on how they play the game, but ultimately there's some adjustments that are going to have to happen throughout the off season. We all are very aware of that, and so seeing an article today about the NFL's top 50 free agents and where they might stand and where they might go was kind of interesting to me. I tweeted it out earlier, but I just kind of wanted to talk about, some of the guys that they decided that they felt like were good fits here, some that people have mentioned before, and then some that, they put them in contention, and some that they didn't talk about that I'm like, I kind of think that the Commander should be on that person or another. But the first thing, talking about Dan Quinn's seat, I'm kind of honestly thinking that maybe his seat isn't as hot. Either he's being very ballsy with the fact that he's hired two guys that don't have a ton of experience. I think you can say that, their DC had, 1 year of experience in LSU or at LSU in 2021, I believe, calling plays, specifically. But he doesn't really have a lot of experience calling plays. I know that they had mentioned, I can't remember who I was listening to, but mentioned that the fact that he did, a few preseason games. Flores gave him the opportunity to, call the plays on a few preseason games, which gives him some practice, I guess. But, and then, obviously Blau has none. So, these are some risky moves for a coach that is, if you feel like he's on the hot seat, these are some risky moves. So I'm kind of curious if they feel like maybe the leash isn't as tight as we think it is. I mean, he did go to NFC Championship that first year, so maybe the front office really believes in him. I like DQ, but I think last year was just so bad that if they were to have a really tough year, this coming up, it'd be hard to still be jumping on that train, feeling like it's going in the right direction. What I will say is that the schedule this coming year is going to be really tough. I don't know if people haven't seen it. It's not going to be. They play a lot of good teams again this next coming year. So we'll see. I think it is something to discuss or something to think about. I mean, these are some risky moves, so maybe he does have a little bit more, freedom than we think, right? But let's get into this article, man. This article that I saw from Zachary Pereles. I don't know if I'm saying that right at all, but he had a group of people. He went through the top 50, free agents, top 50 in his opinion, I guess, free agents that are available, and ones that he kind of tried to pinpoint a destination for each one of them. Some of them he has, as suitors. Like he had basically the team that player played for, the team that he thinks that they're going to go to in 2026, and then some suitors that are basically, I guess, like honorable mention. Some of them that he had tied here. George Pickens, I don't think George is going to come here. Devin Lloyd also. I mean, these are two guys I think their teams would be kind of crazy to let them walk. We've seen Jerry be really weird about it. And then he also had Kyle Pitts in there, which I thought was, I think Kyle Pitts might test free agency, but I think with Stefanski coming back, they're going to really probably try to push to keep him. Having a strong offensive coach, I know that would be the first thing I would want. Then he had a few other players that I think that he didn't have them coming here. But I also think that they could really be in contention. I mean, the first one, Jalen Phillips, a guy who, got traded to Philly, this year. I think Philly, their biggest problem is they have a lot of guys that they're going to want to they're going to have to pay in the next couple of years. So do they take a chance on Phillips? And, with that being something that they would have to make some of these other guys walk. Phillips coming here, I think he'd be just really expensive. I think they could potentially get someone else, especially if they go edge in the draft. They can, use some of that money to tie up some other positions. Tariq Woolen, I love Tariq Woolen. Great kind of corner, long, rangy corner that DQ generally likes. I could see him being a person that could come here. But they had him as one of the suitors. Kobe Bryant also, from Seattle. I think they had him going to the Patriots, but they also had this, team as being a suitor. And then Boye Mafe, which is actually somebody that I think makes sense for the way that AP likes to spend. We all are very aware that AP doesn't like to bring out the checkbook a lot. I feel like Boye Mafe is a guy who has played really well, and it's not expected to make a bunch of money. I think from what I saw, his expected next, payday could be around like $9 million, whereas a person like Jalen Phillips was looking like $17 million from Spot Track. So those are some guys that they didn't have coming here, but they could be. A couple people they didn't have coming here, which I thought was surprising that they didn't have them even as suitors, was Breece Hall and Romeo Doubs. I just feel like both of those guys should be in consideration, especially Breece Hall, in my opinion. I just think that they need another running back, and I think that Breece is that number one guy, and it looks like him and, the Jets probably are going to go their separate ways in regards to this, but I might do a whole video on him in the future. But those two specifically I thought was weird, that they didn't even have them as considerations. Retirement, they have Bobby Wagner retiring. He was, I think, number 47 on this list, and they just have him retiring, but they mentioned that he could obviously go back to DC, and I think that, depending on what happens in free agency, or what they think they can get in free agency, Bobby might be back. I mean, he is a leader on this team. They need some more leadership, especially in that linebacker room. But the three guys that they actually have coming to DC, the first one's Alec Pierce, which I think a lot of people, I think he's a fan favorite for a lot of people who are looking into free agency. I've heard his name plenty in Twitter land and on other YouTube channels and stuff like that. He had 1,000 yards this year, tall, rangy, just really fast receiver, has speed. The Commanders need another receiver. I mean, I don't know if they bring back Debo. Debo was more of a gadget guy. I think they really need a true number two outside of Terry. I mean, you saw how it was such a struggle to move the ball downfield when Terry wasn't in the game, when he was hurt this year. I think Treylon can be somebody that's a development project, but to rely on him being the number two, I don't think that's, he's more of like a 3 or 4 right now. There is the IU conversation. I might do a video on that in the future, because we don't know what's going to happen with IU. We don't know if he's going to get released. We don't know if there's going to be somebody who's willing to trade for him. I don't see how, just based upon everything that's happened in the last year, but that's another person that could be, a part of this consideration. But I do think Alec Pierce would be a great addition on the other side. They have the money to spend on Alec Pierce. Now they could say, you know what, I think the lack of a second rounder in the draft makes me more thinking that they'll probably have to go receiver in free agency, because, they could go and wait for their third rounder, but they need so much help on defense and a lot of young talent on defense. I still think that they'll probably go edge and safety in those first 2 picks, in the first and third. Now, which one's first, which one's second, I don't know, but that would just be my guess. But then, to talk about helping defense in free agency, he has Quay Walker being signed here, which is, I think, maybe out of everybody in this list, might be most people's like number one get, because there is a big hole at backer, especially with, this team not knowing what's going on with Bobby. With Bobby, they need to find, even if they're going to bring Bobby back, they need to start really getting somebody who's going to take over. They need to find who their next leader is, the next green dot person. Is that going to be Quay Walker? Is that going to be a safety like Caleb Downs if they drafted him? Like, they need to start finding the succession plan for their defensive leader. I mean, they know that they're rocking with Jaden. Jaden's their offensive leader. They need a defensive leader. And if Bobby's going to retire, or if he's going to come back on like another 1-year deal, they need to find that guy. And so is Quay Walker that guy? I mean, I'm not sure if he does the green dot in Green Bay, but I know he is one of the leader type people on that squad. So bringing Quay Walker in would be really, really big. And I think that these are both players, Alec Pierce and him, are both affordable guys that they could, for that. We got to think about AP. AP is not a big spender, at least it hasn't seemed like that. I don't know, how much he spent in his history when he was in San Fran and like how much he was pushing for spending. But just in the last 2 years, we recognize he's not a huge spender here. But that might change this year with the lack of draft picks. The last person that they had here going to the Commanders was Isaiah Likely, which I think they should be all on top of. They need to address tight end. I think we all are fans of Zach Ertz. Had a hell of a career, but the injury that he sustained this year, you have another person that you have to go younger. You have to find a succession plan. And with Senate not really, turning out to be the guy that they were hoping for so far, maybe that's because Cliff wasn't using him the right way. Maybe they believe in him strongly and they feel like Blau will do what they need for. He does still give me more vibes of a Kyle Juszczyk, like H-back, than like true tight end. But either way, I mean, Ertz, even if Sinnott takes that Ertz role, they still need another tight end, I think. Because, I mean, we know that John Bates is a quality blocker, but he's not really, a pass catcher. And Likely is just right down the street, man. Like, I just think that would make sense. And so for those three guys, if they were to get those three in free agency, that's a win in free agency. Last year, they did not make many splashes. Those three would be big splashes to adjust, and they're all young people. I mean, I think Pierce is 25. I think Quay is 25 as well. They're all young guys, and so those are the kind of moves. If they're going to spend money, those are the kind of moves that they need to make. Is get young guys who've already played well, that are worthy of those second contracts, but that still have a lot on their plate. Not like the Trey Hendrickson. I'm glad to see that they didn't have Trey Hendrickson on this, mainly because as much as I like Trey Hendrickson as a player, it would be kind of crazy for a team that has so many holes to spend a lot of money on a 31-year-old end, right? Like they gotta spend money on the young guys to build this roster back up. Will they have that momentum with a new DC? I don't know. These guys have to be worthy and willing to come through here. But I just thought the guys that they actually had paired here would get, most fans excited. So let me know if there's a guy on here that you feel like should have been tied to them or somebody that they would want to get. I would say out of the guys that I think that they didn't have here that I would still love to see them, push for would probably be Boye Mafe and Tariq Woolen. But, there's a lot of, talented players. I mean, there are going to be players that get cut. We don't know who is really going to be in that free agency pot until we get a little closer to that March 11th start date. But just wanted to jump on here, talk a little bit about that. Kind of a slower day, a lot of Senior Bowl action. Obviously, go and watch the recap video, the preview video I did with Josh Taylor of A to Z Sports. He's covering it there. So if you guys need more info, please follow him. Get as much info as you can with that. A lot of people are showing out down there. Obviously we'll be following to see if anything else comes through in the next few days. But if you have any, if you like the video, if you like what we're doing, please like, subscribe, give us a shout. And, if you have any opinions on this, feel free to, put some comments down below. Thank you for your time and talk to you soon. All right. Peace.